What's up, everybody? It is Leroy from Acaville and music director and bass for the Trills. Now, I'm so happy and excited to announce that this is the first episode of our new series on Acaville TV, and that is The Winning Edge. Yes, The Winning Edge, our new show on Acaville TV, where we are committed to educating and equipping you to make sure you have all the tools you need to have the most successful year in competitive acapella. So whether you're competing in ICCAs or anything with CASA, we want to make sure that you have all the information and also can have fun learning from legends that have been a part of these competitions for years. And this first episode, when I say legends, I mean legends. Everyone knows the names Bram and Shams Ahmed. Bram, the co-founder of Pentatonix. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. He also arranged and produced on Glee, The Sing Off, Pitch Perfect, all the movies. Also is a two-time Grammy and Emmy Award winner. I mean, when I say that Bram is a legend, he's a legend. And in the same way, Shams Ahmed, possibly one of the greatest arrangers that we've seen in college acapella, the music director for Nor'easters when he was in it, but also just has created these arrangements that have lasted years and years and years of people just listening and studying. I call him the Eric Whitaker of acapella. He's also the co-founder of the Acapop Kids. Super involved in everything that you see in acapella. Not only that, but also the first Bangladeshi American that has won an Emmy. So this episode's really fun. There was a little bit of technical difficulties in the beginning of our filming, and so the editing in the beginning is a little choppy, but I promise you this episode is amazing. There's so many golden nuggets that they share. Not only that, but towards the end of this interview, Shams reveals, and I say reveals, I'm not trying to be clickbaity, but Shams reveals one of the greatest things I've learned about his arrangement technique and how he arranges. And I think you might be surprised by it. So stay tuned. I hope you enjoy it. It's going to be great. And there's going to be more episodes to come. It's going to be fun. See you there.
This is the story of when we went and did this to a group.
Oh, yeah.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I do have distinct memories of like finishing an arrangement, going to Kinko's.
Okay, hold on. I need
Big reveal.
All right, everybody, welcome to episode 1 of The Winning Edge. We have an episode of episodes for all of you. I have two, I call them Avengers of Acapella, two of the Avengers of Acapella. We have Shams Ahmed and Bram.
Sure.
So I was looking at all of your websites and your bios and looking at the career that I know you all to have. And what's so interesting, and I find this in a lot of other greats in just music or just the world period, the word co is behind a lot of descriptions, from co-founder to co-producer to co-arranger. And something that's cool about that is the importance of collaboration that I've seen in both of your careers. Can you guys talk about like what does collaboration mean to both of you?
I was gonna make a co-elaboration pun, but yeah, the co is very important, and it's something that I really value in a lot of my work. And I enjoy working by myself and doing stuff, but it's always more fun with other people.
Yeah.
And in starting different projects, whether it's Acapella Academy or Acapop Kids and Citizen Queen that I started with Shams and Scott, it's always nice to have other people to motivate you, to inspire you, to when you're having a day where you're just not sure where things are going or what's next, you always have someone to bounce these ideas off, and you're not just like sitting in your own emotions all the time and blockages. So it's really nice to get a variety of perspectives, and just like it's a great way to just keep the ball rolling and to keep things fresh.
I totally agree. I think collaboration is like the spirit of what makes creative, jobs and creative endeavors fun. I also think it's a way to improve things more than you can do on your own. Many times, some of the best ideas can happen like on an individual stroke of genius or whatever. But I find that in collaboration, especially collaborating with Ben for many, many years, we try to we come into a situation with mutual respect and mutual understanding that like we want to make the thing the best, and there's no kind of like, if you don't take it personally, it can be really powerful to collaborate with somebody and constantly try to beat each other's ideas. And I think that's a really fun way to be creative. And I think the end product's always better than if you just go it alone. Many,
Mm.
like 9 times out of 10, it's better when you can volley with somebody.
I love that. I love the competitive nature that collaboration can bring, but in the way that's through love for the music and love for each other. I like how you said like trying to almost beat each other's ideas out, but it's not in a way of like, oh, I want to be a better like idea contributor to this project, but it's like, wow, how can we lift this project up together in a way that's making each other better? I think there's something, actually, me and my wife in marriage counseling, we were first engaged. Something that our counselor told us was like, when you're fighting, you're not fighting each other. You are fighting towards a greater marriage. You're fighting for a great relationship. And so like there is a sense of like, we really want to work hard and get to this goal, but it's not like, hey, I want to beat out this person that I'm collaborating with. It's like, no, we're both like really grinding to get this great product at the end of that. So
Yeah,
I
I
love
think
that.
it's like it's one of those things where you know, you can come with all of your experience and your knowledge about something, and then the other person comes with their experience and their knowledge, and how can you put that together to make something even better, so bigger than
Yeah.
the sum of its parts, right?
Yeah, I love that. And I think you both are like kings of collaboration. Ooh, kings of collaboration. That should be a something. I don't know, a book or somewhere. But yeah, so I love looking back at your careers and seeing, I mean, the massive things that you guys have built. Acapop Kids, Citizen Queen, like it's been constant that whenever you guys are together, it's building something great. But this show, I want to talk a lot about college, high school acapella and the competitive. We've been talking about competitiveness a little bit already. Ben, something I didn't know and I learned recently was you actually didn't get into SoCal vocals the first time you auditioned.
That's right.
What was it about acapella, about SoCal vocals that made you want to not only try again, audition again, and then obviously have the career in SoCal vocals that you had for the next 3 years, I think, or two or 3 years.
You can thank Emily Golia for that.
Okay.
She was in SoCal Vocals with me, and I auditioned, and then we were in like a gender studies class together, and she convinced me to re-audition. And I was like, okay, fine. There,
Wow.
and they were having like lower voices only, like Barry bass VP. I was like, okay, and I can sing low and I can arrange, and I brought in all my stuff, and I kind of always knew that I never was gonna be a star performer. That was never really my goal, but I did want to use my acapella group as kind of like a vehicle, both for just like of social life and meeting people, and also just to develop skills, music direction, arranging, and it really became like the place where I did all that and really grew as a leader. So I think the first time I auditioned, it was like, okay, he's not the best singer, he's not the best
Yeah.
performer, and then it kind of became clear by the second time that like I had something else to offer.
I would totally agree. Actually, I don't know that if I auditioned purely as a singer for the Nor'easters this year, that I would get in as a singer.
Mm,
Which is obviously interesting because I did get into the group, but at that time when I was in the Nor'easters, it was a very different group. I think when Ben entered the SoCal Vocals, it was actually like a very good group at that point. But when I entered Nor'easters, I actually came from a very intense high school like choral music and musical theater program, and so when I came to Northeastern, I to study finance. I mean, I wasn't studying music or anything like that.
mm.
I was like, oh, I want a really great, serious musical outlet, but there were none. And all the acapella groups, I mean, Northeastern's acapella program now is so different from what it was in 2008. And so when I went there, I actually auditioned for a bunch of groups, and none of the groups were particularly good. Um,
Wow.
I'll get slammed for this, but some of the alumni who were there, but we all know what it was. So it was much more of a social group thing, which was great. I wanted that just similarly to Ben, but when I entered the Nor'easters, they weren't very good. But
Mm.
you know that similarly for me was like such an imperative kind of moment for me in the start of my journey, because that's where I took this like small interest that I had in vocal arranging, which I discovered really in my senior year of high school,
Mm.
while I was taking like music theory AP, and I was like, oh, four-part classical, four-part writing, like this is something that I just kind of get in my brain, but I didn't realize had like all these there was all this like you know there were technical names for these things and theories. And so as I was learning music theory, I was like, oh, this is really natural to me. So I wanted a venue to exercise that, become a leader, and I ended up becoming the music director of Nor'easters like by one singular vote. You know, in
Wow.
my freshman year, spring semester. Um, it was drama, but that's a different podcast. Um, and I had so much time to be the director of the Nor'easters, you know, that I was bound to become good at arranging. Like when you have a
Mm,
group that you can arrange for every single week and rehearse every single week and edit your arrangements, like, that's an amazing place to be able to train.
right. When you say every week, were you making how frequently were you making new arrangements?
In the beginning, I was making new arrangements, yeah, like I would say like once every 2 weeks, but I'm saying
Wow.
rehearsing every week. You're rehearsing multiple times every week, so you're able to like see how your arrangements are sounding, and then you can go back to the drawing board and,
Yeah.
constantly be editing. And I think as a young arranger at that time, that was like the thing that I needed to
Yeah.
improve my skills.
Yeah, but even every 2 weeks, say that like there's a lot of arrangers that they're taking 2 months and they're making an arrangement, I don't think it's because it takes 2 months for these people to make arrangements, but I think there's this space that a lot of beginning arrangers get where they're super analyzing everything that they're doing. And it's like, okay, this measure, ooh, what if I change that? What if I change this? What if I change that? And you start to take each measure and each week you're like, okay, I got 10 measures done. But a lot of it's a lot of overthinking. I think there's a value to kind of putting yourself in this environment where it's like, all right, I'm going to turn out arrangements a lot faster, a lot more frequently, because you just have to, and you need to bring them
Uh,
out.
we didn't have any arrangements, so somebody needed to arrange songs, and I was like, well, all the songs that we were doing before were corny, and I wanted to
Mm.
do Neo. So
Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna arrange Neo. Like nobody else was gonna arrange it, so I was just gonna do it. And yeah, I mean, you just kind of learn. And I think, was I precious about it? For sure. When you're a young director, of course, you're like precious about everything, but you also like make so much time. I mean, I cut like every single class. I literally was arranging all the time, and then I would like bring the arrangements to rehearsal that night. But yeah, I
This
mean,
does not
I
mean that
understand.
everyone should be cutting class to make their arrangements.
Yeah, like go to your
However, it
classes, I
might get you
guess,
to be like a Shams in the future, but don't do it.
at your own risk.
I do have distinct memories of like finishing an arrangement, going to Kinko's, and feeling like very excited and proud at Kinko's, copying my arrangement to bring to the group that night. I was like, yeah,
Right.
I did
That's
it.
so relatable. I mean, I remember like going to the library, printing out your sheet music and stuff. And I remember there was this one building on campus that's like the John D. O'Brien African American like Institute. And there are
Mm.
like all these classrooms like in the back of that building, and there were no classes in there. And there were just kind of these open classes. So I would like go and sit there and literally just camp out all day. I'd have like my whole setup, my laptop,
Wow.
speakers, and everything. And different people in the Nor'easters would like come and visit me throughout the day because I'd be like, I'm posting up here. If anybody wants to talk to me, like come, whatever. So
Wow.
people come in just like check out what I was doing, and that was great because you have your group is like rallying behind you because they see like the potential in you, and that's so important for
Yeah.
a young director.
I love the time that the both of you put into this thing called acapella, like growing up. Like it wasn't just like, oh, I'll make one arrangement every now and then and like just give it to the group and not really care about like the process. But there's an excitement that both of you talking about your experience arranging, there's an excitement in your eyes of like, man, I'm like creating something. By the time you get to the finished product, it's not even about even just the performing of it, but it's like, man, I made this thing that was started in my head and it's on this paper that now I'm going to have 12, 13, 14, 15 singers sing, and it's going to sound what I heard in my head. And it's cool also being able to be an arranger and music director in your group where you're hearing the process, but also you get to mold it a little bit afterwards.
I mean, we should definitely talk about competition, but I will say one thing. And Ben, I don't know if you had this moment ever, but like I remember the first time I ever brought like my first arrangement to the Nor'easters. It was an arrangement of it was a mashup arrangement of What Hurts the Most by Rascal Flatts and
Mm.
the like Cascada techno remix of the same song. And that arrangement was so bad now looking back, obviously, but I was so proud of it. And I remember bringing it to rehearsal and hearing them sing it for the first time. And I was truly mind blown by the fact that like these ideas that I had in my mind were now like physicalized in the real world.
Mm.
And that feeling like is is something that I'll never forget and is actually oftentimes something I'll go back to if I'm ever feeling like jaded about, doing creative work or like doing arrangements. Because these days, finding myself to like be motivated to arrange if I'm not like super excited about it is very hard. But I remember like, 18-year-old me and just being like so jazzed about it.
Ben, what was your first song that you arranged for Soca Vocals? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was Zach and Sarah by Ben Folds, and it was not a good arrangement at all.
Nice.
We performed it one time, and then after that performance, I was like, yeah, let's not do that anymore.
So
Back to the
good.
drawing board.
I think we all have so many of those where like you're making it, you're like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I thought I was being very clever with like how I was vocalizing the piano part, but it was really, it did not turn out the way I expected.
Right. But I think those moments too is so important for us to get it out of our heads, try it, and being like, okay, that didn't work. And then like sometimes we can get to a why didn't that work? Okay, next time I'll do something differently and but the same idea. Or sometimes it's just like, that wasn't meant to happen. And that's okay. That's still something that like we can take and push to our next arrangement.
Yeah, it's the first step to getting better is like having those moments where you're like, okay, that didn't work. Mental note of that.
Right.
Moving on, and you continue to hone your skills that way.
There's no substitute for experience, right? Like
100%. Now, Ben, you mentioned Ben Folds. He's a real big inspiration for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of my initial inspiration as far as like harmonically speaking, chord wise, piano playing, because he really like he was a pop piano player, but he also added a lot of extensions to his music and was more harmonically complex than a lot of other pop stuff. So it was kind of a nice middle ground to like explore different sounds and harmonies. So yeah, I love Ben Folds.
nice.
What are some and let's nerd out a little bit. What are some of those like more harmonic complex things that they might do that you've like brought into your arranging style?
Even just like that, the ad nine is so common
Yeah,
now, but like
yeah,
it was something he had all through his music. And like when you're studying jazz, you don't really just the ad nine without the seven is not like a very common thing. So just to kind of break some of those like jazz or classical rules and just like throw in an extra note because it sounds cool.
yeah,
Stuff like that was like fun, and to see him breaking rules like that.
yeah. That add-on because it sounds cool, I think is the only reason why I've ever done well as an arranger. Because I like, especially starting out, I had no idea what notes I was adding to things because I wasn't using sheet music, especially starting out, but still now wasn't really using sheet music. So it was just like, oh, why are you doing that? Because it sounds cool. Like that really being the thing. But I think that's such a value to be able to not care so much about what the status quo is or what's supposed to happen, but just doing something that's just like because it sounds cool. Like Shams, there's so many moments in your arrangements that honestly the chords that you use are unlike any other chords that I hear in vocal music ever. I've mentioned him multiple times and I'll probably stop now, but there's so many similarities to Eric Whitacre in
You're gonna have to start paying Eric Whitacre money for this TV show. Actually, it's funny that you mentioned him because actually, you know, my inspiration, I mean, I think I have a lot of different kind of inspirations when it comes to like my musical identity, or especially at that time. One of them was definitely Imogen Heap. One of them
yes.
definitely Eric Whitacre. And as a young adolescent choir boy, I would listen to Eric Whitacre all the time and just be so enthralled by his use of like tone clusters. And
Yeah.
tone clusters to me, I mean, like I also similarly to I think what you're saying about how it's like just because it sounds cool for me, like Eric was doing something where he was actually creating textures with just chords and without like sometimes the chords would just be almost nonsensical, right? Like to
Yeah.
somebody who's like a very like within the box kind of arranger, that's what I so admired about him because he was like evocative of like all these feelings. He was evoking these feelings from the chords. And sometimes the chords would just be like 12 notes of just like sound. And to me, that it was so powerful. So I think my early days when I started feeling really empowered as an arranger, um, I would employ a lot of those types of musical, devices and tactics, the same way that Eric Whitacre did. And so,
Nice.
later in life, when I came to know and become friends with Eric, I was like, this is the coolest thing ever, because a
Right.
15-year-old version of me was like obsessed with you. And for us to like now just like be in LA, and for you to, stop me on the street and ask me if I'm Shams from the internet is wild,
Woo!
and
Woo!
like, so
Man.
yeah, Eric Whitacre, huge inspiration for me, still is. He's brilliant. Um, Imogen Heap, in terms of just her textures and like the way that she layers. I know she's having a big moment now, like on TikTok and stuff, but like I have been with Imogen since the beginning.
Well, even like that era of Imogen Heap, I think I can so hear the influence in your arrangements as well. Your use of almost like percussive melodic hockets and repeating melodies that just are just weaved all throughout your arrangements. A lot of Imogen Heap music is a lot of like repeated rhythmic just ding 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 just happening throughout the entire thing. And so I totally hear that. It's one of my favorite things of your arranging style. And I've honestly I've adopted it in a lot of stuff that I do of just like creating these melodic hooks that aren't exactly in the song, but people can just grab onto, just like this is now a part of the song. It's not even a question anymore. When I hear writings on the wall and I hear ding 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 da, ding ding, it's like that's nothing that's a Shams writings on the wall arrangement, but that's just part of the song now. Um,
Yeah, I
so
think from an arranging perspective, I always thought that a cappella should be an elevated form of what the original song is, because
yeah.
if you're not going to elevate it, or add something new to the conversation, like what's the point? Like you should just listen to the
Yeah.
original song. It's probably better.
Right.
And
It reminds me of a conversation. You know how, they make animated versions or live action versions of animated things now. And a lot of people are like, man, why do you keep changing things in the live action? But someone made a commentary about it, and it's because, if you make just the exact same version, like the same exact script, same exact song, same exact everything, then you're basically just saying like the animated version wasn't good enough, and so you just had to make it live action. But when you create something new in it, it's like here's a new elevated story, a new elevated version that creates just like a new way of thinking about something that used to exist already. So I think arrangers definitely can be a lot more experimenting, a lot more creative, and almost treat the song like you're a songwriter. Treat the song as if you're like, all right, if I'm going to take the message that the original songwriter had, but now I'm going to say, okay, what if Leroy wrote this song, or what if Phil wrote this song, or Sarah, whoever's arranging, to treat it as if it's your composition.
I think arrangers are in many ways artists. And if
Yeah.
arrangers can think of themselves more as artists, right? We oftentimes say, okay, like the artist is like the singer, and they're like the person who has like the vibe and the voice, and then there are composers, and those are people who
Mhm.
are songwriters. But then there's arrangers, and I feel like arrangers get a little bit, they're just kind of compartmentalized in this way that doesn't really allow them to think of themselves sometimes as artists with their own artistic vision. And I feel like the arrangement is at the heart of like what, especially in a cappella music, um,
Mhm.
it's at the heart of that. And so if young arrangers can think of themselves more as artists, I think that their work could take on like just a whole new life. And I think that bringing on like a more compositional approach to the way
Yeah.
that you arrange music like can be, and again, there's a time and a place for all of this, right? There's a time and place for you to have something that is a vocal rendition of a song that sounds exactly like the song, but then there's also a time and a place for something that's more compositional and more
Yeah.
artistic, if you will.
Speaking of, and Ben, I want to hear from you on this. I think there's two different sounds or two different styles of arrangement when you're creating for a competitive group. Or at least what comes out of the group. There's the type of arrangement you hear at their spring concert or on their album. And then there's the type of arrangement people are making for competition. And for some reason, there's always a very drastic difference between the two arrangements from the same arranger. What do you think is a key difference that people are doing or can do to make a competitive a cappella arrangement and in the arrangement for the concert?
Personally, I don't think there should be that big of a difference.
Yeah.
Like a good arrangement is a good arrangement. Obviously, when you're at a competition, you're trying to show the very best you can do. So you pick a song that's exactly aligned with the exact soloist you want to show off, or level of drama that you want to convey, or how well known the song is, or all these other factors. So it's just such a well constructed, or it's a very over thought out version of what
Yeah.
it is. So, I mean, what people are doing is they're like, okay, well, how many bell tones can we add? How many most
Yeah.
impressive moments can we put in there? How many group riffs and how many beatbox breakdowns? And I think that's, it makes sense that that's the approach. But, I think for me, the key is feeling true to the song and true and genuine, right? And
Yeah.
so when I see a group that's throwing out all the stops, but it doesn't make emotional sense and it doesn't move me, and it's maybe not perfectly done,
Yeah.
then I'm like, what's the point of all this? Can you just, sing something nice and fun and sing it well and lock the chords and,
Yeah.
back to basics a little bit. So I think a big issue, moving into the conversation of just competitions, I think comparison is a huge issue that groups have, and they see other groups that do well, and they say we want to try to win, and we're going to try to emulate this group or this group or this sound, and they end up creating something that's just kind of a copycat version of someone else's vision that doesn't serve that group well at all, and they don't win, and that
Yeah.
you don't really see groups winning that are like doing stuff like that. The groups that are winning are kind of coming with their own sound. They have a unique vision. They have something to say. They have they have message. They have a message. They're obviously really good. But more than anything, they're focused more on what they are trying to say and convey rather than what has won the competition before. Let's do that.
Yeah, because what has won the competition before is already won. Those
Yeah.
competitions have already been won by those groups that did their things, and it's like, what is new? I will say that there are some like technical things that I do want to touch on when it comes to like specifically kind of preparing for a competition, as opposed to your spring concert, because I do believe that there is a difference. Obviously, your spring concert is going to be a celebration of your group and all of the people in your group. So many times you're going to want to have like, lots of different people soloing and things like that. But in
Mm.
a competition, you have to make some difficult decisions. And I think one thing that especially college groups have, I think high school groups don't have as much of a problem with this because typically their directors pick their soloists. But college groups have so many interior politics, and there's a lack of self-awareness,
Mm.
and a lack of an ability to have difficult conversations about what our best strengths as a group are. And because people have feelings, and people's feelings are important. um, but I think if you really want to put your best foot forward, having those conversations about, okay, who are our like main people that we really need to feature, what types of songs like are we as a group, like not necessarily what songs we like to listen to on the radio or what's most popular, but like what are the songs that resonate with us the most that we can
Mm.
perform really well, right? Ben was referring to the message, or the emotional connectivity of a piece. It's like you have to be able to like look within yourself first to be able to then make those decisions that are going to be strong, that will then hopefully make you successful in the competition, if
Yeah.
it really is something that you want to do. I do think that there are some like surefire ways that groups can be can begin to be successful outside of them picking the right material, putting their soloist, all that stuff. I mean, I think that's obvious to people, like they should do that. But there are some things that, as a person who judges ICCA finals very regularly, I see this, and I also I impress this upon people as much as possible whenever they ask me. I'm like, you need to put yourself into the position of a judge. If
Mm.
you are judging this competition, imagine that you are sitting in the auditorium and there are 10 groups about to perform, and they have 10-minute long or 12-minute long sets, and you have never seen them before. So you are responsible now for having two pieces of paper in your hand, one where you have all these numerical scores, and another where you have a bunch of qualitative observations that you have to write for every single song,
Hmm.
and you've never seen the set before. So imagine that role from that perspective.
Right.
when you're crafting your set, what are you doing in the first 10 seconds of your set when you know your judge isn't writing anything down yet, right? What are you doing in the
Right.
first 10 to 30 seconds of your set? Are you hitting some of those really, really important foundational fundamental marks?
Mm,
Can your group sing in tune? Does your group look professional as they walk out onto the stage or whatever they do?
yeah.
Is your group generally balanced? Like the sound, when I hear it in the very beginning of your set, can I trust that this group is more or less gonna sing in tune, sing with balance, have a nice blend, have great tone, and maybe we'll get some dynamics in there. If you
Hmm.
can, if you can, um, if you can prove to a judge who will definitely be watching your set for the first 30 seconds because they have nothing to write about yet,
Hmm.
you prove to them in the first 30 seconds that you can handle those things, a judge will be very excited to award your group with as many points as you deserve on those other criteria. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
No, that's a golden nugget. And I hope if someone's watching this right now, you're writing these notes down because that is crucial. Those first 30 seconds, you hit it right on the nose. When they're not writing things down yet, when their eyes are up, that's the most important time of your entire set. And some I actually heard another episode later on that's not aired yet, but a choreographer was talking about those moments in your set where you know their eyes are going to be up, whether the chord that you hit was huge or the whatever thing the beatboxer's doing is super cool. You want to make sure that when their eyes are going to be up because of that moment, that you also have something for them to look at while in those moments. So in the very beginning, exactly when you're walking on stage, it's not just like, all right, places, where are we going? Where are we going? The best groups that come in, they coming in left, right, on beat together, looking where you need to look. And that's those are the groups that do well in competition.
Yeah, and it's not to say that you have to be rigid. I mean, I think I came from first,
Yeah.
like, I came from a group that is classically very kind of like rigid looking on stage because that was our vibe. Like we wanted to be
Yeah.
strong and powerful and not we weren't like a dancey group. Like we knew that we weren't dancers. So we're like we're going to be extremely precise with our very like precise movements. Whereas there are groups that are great dancers. I look at, that's it's why I look at SoCal Vocals and whatever
Hmm.
that year when they did Hammer. I mean, that was a
Mhm.
set that was like really fun and dancey. So they're gonna come on with a different character. But I think what unites all of this is that when a group comes on and they look like they know what they are about to do and they are so committed to that, that's what makes me feel like, oh yeah, this group knows what's up. Like
Yeah.
if you can walk on a stage and just convince me that you know what you're doing, I trust. And if you can build that trust early on, you can really be successful in competition.
That's good. That's so good.
One thing I just really want to drive home is that emotion doesn't always mean sadness and anger and being distraught. Emotion can be happy. Emotion can be excited. Emotion can, and I think a lot of acapella groups really kind of take the darker energy
Hmm.
and run with that. And then you get a set of 8 out of 10 groups doing just like extremely dark, gut wrenching renditions of these songs, and then you get really just overwhelmed, and that's all you're
Yeah.
listening to. And so when you get a group that comes and does something a little different, a little more upbeat, a little lighter, it really kind of gives you a rest from that. So I
Yeah.
think, I think I thought we were kind of beyond that era of acapella, but we are not.
We're
There's
so
still
not.
there's still so many groups doing that, and not to say that you can't ever do that, because that is a valid form of expression, and
Right.
I think it can be done very well. But I think it's been the go-to, it's been the default for many groups, and I think it has to be a very conscious choice of like, this is what we're trying to say, this is how we're going to say it, and not just like, oh, we saw this other group do like this, so let's try to be like them, or
Yeah.
I do think that it's interesting because I agree with you, and I think um, that I love like an emotional like big moment. I think the things that I love when I see groups doing is when it's authentic to who they are. Like if they
Mm.
are coming at this with, like they and you can tell that this is like either crafted by them or this is like something that they really feel strongly about. I remember like once I was watching a set by Voices in Your Head from U Chicago, and I think their whole set was like composed like original compositions, which I was like, that's a risk.
Yeah.
That is such a cool thing to do to showcase who you are and what your identity is. You know, I think even when I was in Nor'easters or when arranging for the Nor'easters, you know, a lot of people could say that like Nor'easters is a very like intense and dark group, but in my view of it, actually, there was so much uplifting energy in some of those like extremely intense moments, especially like the way I like to craft it like a set closer, for example, is to have like yes these moments of melancholy, but like actually it's overcoming something, and to
Mhm.
me that makes like such a great set closer. But that's also just my style, right? That's what I
Yeah.
like. And there are lots of people who are like, okay, I want to close with like a Bruno Mars banger, which is also a great way to do it. And it just really it needs to be authentic to like who you are as a group and like what your people can do. So having those like hard,
Yeah.
conversations with your group is so important.
I think it's big just not being afraid to do the thing that didn't win or that your favorite group isn't doing. Like people can look at a SoCal Vocals, look at a Nor'easters and be like, man, I love that so much. That really touched my heart a lot. And so they want to do that because of how it affected them. Like the Faux Pas is a group that I grew up watching a lot, and I was like, man, I want to make music like them. And so there was a time where I was trying to. But then there was like okay, but that's not how I'm feeling right now, or that's not where my group is right now. So just because it's not a faux pas style thing, it's okay. I love that, and that's great. And also, I can create something that's authentic to me. So I think there's this balance of, doing what's inspired you, like using that to inspire you and push you forward, but also being a little bit more risky and being original and finding out what your own voice is. I mean, you both have very specific sounds to your music and your arrangement. What's something that you could say for current arrangers of how you balance that, being inspired by previous arrangers or previous musicians, but also finding their own sound and finding their own kind of personality in their music?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying was right on. Is that in the beginning you really have to take inspiration from everywhere until you can develop your own vocabulary and find your own voice through that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, there really isn't a way to do it besides just doing it and just like arranging a
Mhm.
lot and seeing what songs you're drawn to and the way that you start to interpret them and what makes you tick, what signature sounds are going to be like things that you gravitate towards,
Yeah, yeah,
and also having versatility and being able to do a lot of different things.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, like I wouldn't for me there wasn't anything that helped me do that besides just doing a lot of it.
I mean, I think that's key. I think, like what I think Shams, you said, there's nothing that replaces experience.
Totally.
And it's just you just kind of just start to work out those things, not out of you as if it's a bad thing you don't want in you, but you just start to need more room for the new inspiration you have from yourself. Or maybe it's like someone in your group did something, you're like, that was really dope. I want to incorporate that in more stuff that we do.
Actually, I want to touch on this. I think you bring up a very good point, and I think the thing that successful groups do is they take stock of who they have and what those
Yeah.
people can do, and they
Mhm.
exploit those talents. It's like finding those skills, those specific things that people in your group can do, and they can be extremely specific. Like, oh, this
Yeah.
person sounds amazing between this major third interval in like a super high octave. Okay, so now we're gonna have a squeak or we're going to do something,
Mm.
or maybe somebody's really good at whistling. Incorporate that into your set. And you know, I'm not talking about like a whistle like we're whistling Yankee Doodle down the street, but like using a whistle as like a sitar to add
Yeah.
like this really beautiful highlight on top of a soprano line. That is a way to use it. Discovering that like, somebody can make a really nice violin sound,
Yeah.
that let's incorporate that. So taking the individual strengths of the people in your group and then the arranger making the plan to say, how am I going to use all of these strengths and then take all the things that we're like not as good at. Like
Yeah.
maybe our baritones are always a little bit flat, or like maybe like our altos are really thick sounding and we need to like use those things that might be hindrances and use those as strengths, and anything else, do
Mm.
your best to, to cover as much or not bring attention to. I see so many groups. It's another pet peeve of mine is there's so many groups that perform, and I'm like, you don't have a singer who's gonna like nail "Break Free" by Ariana Grande. So like, why would you do that song?
Like
Yeah.
we liked it, but
Yeah.
that's not a good enough reason. And I want to add another a couple things, but adding one thing to what you just said, another big skill that I think a lot of groups could use more of is, the arrangers are not always going to be the best riffers, ad-libbers, soloists. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. And there are a lot of people that are amazing singers and have a lot of creativity in their singing for melody modification, for, alternative coming up with background parts even like and those people might not consider themselves arrangers, but you put them in a room with someone who does consider themselves an arranger and you have like a hit. You
Right.
have an amazing combination of skills that can really elevate what the arranger's already doing by just incorporating a couple things from someone who came in and sang like two lines.
Right.
And it just like brings everything up.
The other day, our friend Mario, Mario Jose, for anyone who doesn't know him, he's an awesome, awesome singer.
Definitely.
But he always fancied himself a singer, right? He was like, I'm a professional singer. This is what I do. I sing. But I remember like a couple of years ago, he called me and he was like, Shams, I think I'm an arranger.
Wow.
I was like, you are. You have great ideas. You have, because you sing so much and you listen to so much music and you're in so many groups and bands and you're naturally absorbing arranging
Yeah.
constantly. And so like of course you're a good arranger. And he was like, yeah, I just never thought of myself as an arranger. So I totally agree with Ben's point, that everyone has ideas that would be good for an arrangement, but
Yeah.
it's just having that title like arranger that doesn't necessarily preclude other people from having, you know.
Yeah.
Just because you don't want to open Sibelius and learn a notation software doesn't mean you're not an arranger.
I have not opened Sibelius. I have not opened a notation software more than 10 times in the past 5 years. I have
Really?
I don't use notation software.
Re- okay. Okay. Hold on. Hold on. I
Big
need you to say that.
reveal.
Shams, I need you to say that one more time.
I have never in my life, Shams Ahmed, after the year 20 2011, let's say, have not notated a full arrangement into a notation software of any kind, and I never intend to for the rest of my life.
Other people do it.
Other people do it.
That's
Yeah,
the
of
key.
course.
That's the key. It's not like they don't exist. They exist.
Yeah, and of course, this is not an arranging seminar, but the long and short of it is that I started arranging just like everybody else, like noodling in notation software. I was using Finale at the time, and that's where I really, while I was learning music theory, I was like really incorporating these things. And then after a certain time, I realized that my notation skills were just not as fast as my brain or as my voice. And so I was like, well, I have all this theory understanding. I have all this kind of working in the background by this point. And so then I moved to like a record into DAW from the get-go and then notate after. But then I'm also lazy, so I wanted to maximize my time. So I started like bringing other people on, like hiring people to notate my arrangements for me, and then I would go back and edit them and kind of go
Yeah.
back and forth. But Elliot Von Wendt, who's like a great collaborator of mine, one of the Nor'easter's music directors after, very well known for his arrangement of Creeks. He's excellent, but he really was one of my first like notators. He notated maybe 100 of my arrangements over the course
Wow.
of like 3-4 years, maybe 4 or 5 years probably. I don't know, but um, yeah, I'm a DAW guy, and I like to then have my sheet music noted because there are people who are way better at formatting
Oh
beautiful
yeah.
scores than I am. I'm trash at it.
100%. This is big for me. This is huge for me because I too I never actually I've never used notation software to arrange a cappella.
I will say, yeah, no, I mean, I will say there is a definite value to like understanding that, especially when you're
Totally.
growing up, when you're learning. I think a lot of people like go straight to DAW because they're like, oh, I like to sing, but I may be old school about this, but I am of the belief that like you have to have a decent amount of like understanding of like not music theory necessarily, but like
Well,
you have to be able to understand like chords
yes.
before you're just like willy-nilly like singing stuff all over your DAW. You have to be able to build and everyone has their own way of being systematic about it. So I don't want to like poo-poo somebody else if their process is different from mine. But I think for me at least, having that knowledge of music theory working in the background while I was constructing melodies makes more sense for me.
Yes. Well, I always say so. I've been going around and actually like starting to teach people of how they can arrange without using sheet music, and the biggest thing that I always say, you have to know the rules in order to know which ones to break. And so, not knowing any music theory or not knowing how notation does work does limit what you can do without those things. And so if you're starting just recording in the DAW and not having an experience of what a seventh truly is, or what the function of a ninth is, or how triads work, or different ranges work, then yeah, you are a little bit limited. Yes, you can do things that just sound cool and that can make great arrangements, but it does limit a little bit. But I think it's huge because I go around to a lot of people saying you don't have to use notation to be an arranger, and it's always like, but how? No one does that. And now I can say, well, are you a fan of Nor'easters? Are you a fan of Shams Ahmed? Well, let me tell you something. He doesn't use notation. So I appreciate you saying that. I will be using this clip for everything now for the rest of
You
my
know,
life.
and I will say there's several caveats here. I don't want to like
Of
send
course.
people on down the wrong path. Um, but I do say that I do think that there is a beauty to, especially now in a lot of the work that Ben and I do together and have done, like including Acapella Academy and all these things. This idea of like learning tracks are
Hmm.
it just makes life so much easier. And as acapella attracts more like non-classically trained or people who just don't have a lot of experience with sheet music, or even when we see an acapella academy, we have a lot of kids who are such talented vocalists and talented musicians,
Yeah.
but don't have the maybe they come from a different country and they don't like learn sheet music the same way that we do in like the Western tradition. And so
Right.
having the ability to like demo, I think is really, really important because there's so much that can be communicated when you actually sing something, especially when it's a vocal arrangement,
Big time.
that you can't really get out of sheet music as easily. And so that's why I'm a big proponent of like demoing at least, whether you arrange in notation first or arrange in DAW first. I think it's really important to have all of the materials available, whether it's sheet music, MIDIs, part learning tracks, demos.
Cool. And you're so right. Like we don't want to say that there is one way of arranging, or even that there is a best way. There isn't a best way to do it. There are ways that might be slowing down your process. There might be ways that isn't ideal. For example, maybe a feather and ink on paper isn't the fastest way to notate something. But Ben, I know that you use notation software, right?
I used to only use notation software, and now I simultaneously use Pro Tools and Finale
Okay.
at the same time. I'm
Finale, RIP.
different sections require different approaches. So
Yeah.
one section I really want to sing it out, hear how it sounds. Other sections I'm thinking about it maybe more vertically. I want
Okay.
all the chords to line up. I want to see everything. And so yeah, different sections require different things. And then by the end, I have a fully done demo and fully done score. So it
Yeah.
takes a long time to do it that way, but I find that it requires no edits afterwards. Like once it's done
Right.
and I'm happy with it, then it's done. I don't have to hear how it's going to sound later.
Mhm.
I don't have to edit the score later. I've already kind of done all the work. So that's how I work.
Yeah.
And it
I
is,
love providing job opportunities for other people.
yes,
Yes. Employers. Shams
small
Ahmed.
businesses, yes.
I
Give
love
up our
supporting small businesses.
independent contractors. It's
Um,
great.
No, I
but
I
yeah,
think there's a value to knowing how to do it though. I think there's a value to knowing how to notate. Even if you are doing it in a DAW, there's a value to knowing the information to be in the conversation at least.
For sure. I think especially in this day and age, any musical skill that you can pick up that you can do as you're starting out is going to be useful to you. You can get
Yeah.
work doing any number of things. So whether or not you actually use it for your own music, having these skills, developing these skills, everything is a plus. There's never a reason not to develop a particular skill.
Totally.
And also one thing I wanted to bring up that I thought of way earlier in the conversation was just about going back to competitions and groups and having difficult conversations maybe about soloists or song choice. And I think it's really difficult to lead a group of your peers, as every college group director knows. And I think involving outside trusted people is really important, whether it's someone from the group that graduated a few years ago, an alumni, friends, outside experts that you bring in, any trusted people that can give you an outside perspective of like, I don't know any of these people, but you definitely have to feature this person. They're the, and just someone who is outside of the internal politics that can give it to you straight and not bullshit you and just kind of guide you in the right direction, I think is really key. And you don't have to listen to them, but they've told you what they think, and they're the closest representative of what a judge and an audience is going to think. Because when you're in it, you're not looking at anything the same way that an outside person is. So I think that perspective is incredibly valuable.
This is a perfect segue to story time.
Yes.
When I think when was this? This is the story of when we went and did this to a group.
Oh yeah.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
For sure.
So, should I tell the story?
You can say the group.
I'm so excited.
So I'm in LA. I'm visiting, I think, for Acapella or something. I'm like visiting for something, and Ben's like, "Oh, SoCal Vocals are going to quarterfinals in a week or so, and I'm gonna go and give them some feedback on their set." And this was like 9 days before quarterfinals or something like that. And he's like, "You should come. I think they would like really, really appreciate like your feedback too." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'm down." So we hop over, we listen to their set. I walk in, Ben and I walk in, we're like watching their set. First song, brilliant. Was it Paper Hearts? Something, Quinn.
The mashup, yeah.
Then,
I think that was the second song. Was that the I don't know.
That was the second song, sorry.
First song was Crazy Natalie, I think.
One. Yeah, the one that Ferdy did that where it sounded like Shakira. And then that brilliant first song, brilliant second song. Third song happens, and it's Malia Savets, who's like one of the best singers ever. She's incredible. And it was Hit Me by Dirty Loops, and it was kind of a mess. Like, it just was not nearly as good as the other two songs. So of course Ben and I are like, objectively, that's bad. Like, it's not as good as the other two songs. What else do you know? And this is literally a week before quarterfinals. We're like, what other songs do you guys know? Maybe a song that has Malia on the solo because she's the best soloist. I mean, we're just saying what, like, everything that came to mind. And they're like, I don't know, like, I mean, they're freaking out. They're like, oh my God.
Well, also let's give a little bit of backstory to that, because in their minds, from their perspective, there's this amazing virtuosic song,
which it is
the like Dirty Loops version of it, which is performed by virtuoso instrumentalists with these crazy 16th note riffs and runs and like rhythmic stabs and like all this stuff with a really great solo over it, and it just moves at like a mile a minute, and it's so fast. And just the translation into a vocal arrangement, no group could perform that with the precision needed to pull it off well, really.
Absolutely.
So it just like, it was kind of doomed to fail. And in their minds, they're like, we love the song, we want to perform it. They're rehearsing it. They're like, it sounds pretty good. We're like loving this, but they're not really listening to it without singing it, right? So,
and of course, this is this is like SoCal Vocals. This is not just like some group that has no idea what they're doing. Like, they definitely know, but even groups like that, this is just to illustrate that point where even groups that feel so dialed still are sometimes trapped by their own understanding of their set.
Well, also they pitched the song. They were like, let's do it. They arrange it, they learn it, and then by that point it's like they didn't learn it that it was pretty recent that they learned it before we saw them. So like they were already kind of too far deep. So no, I don't think, even if someone did have second thoughts about it, they weren't going to bring it up to the group at that point.
Of course, nobody wanted to be that person.
No one wants to be that person.
We had to be that person.
Yeah, you need some hard truths. And when you're in a group and you have your schedule and you have your songs picked, like, it's hard to be that person. I wouldn't want to be that person when I was in the group. So that's why it's important to bring in people. And especially before quarterfinals, before any round.
I mean, it was so brilliant. I just remember like that moment where they were like, "Oh shit." And we were like, "Well, okay, but like don't arrange something new. Obviously, it's in a week. What other songs do you know?" And they're like, "I guess we like do Bang Bang." And then we were like, "Great, do Bang Bang." And they
No.
were like, "Are you serious?" But then they practiced, they rehearsed it, they ended up doing it. They won the whole competition. And I'm not saying it's because
Wow.
of Bang Bang, but it was, I mean, Bang Bang was
Also, Bang Bang was still the weakest part of their set as a song.
right.
From those
But
three songs, because the first two were so well crafted and emotionally like perfect and dialed in, and Bang Bang was fun and people liked it,
Bang
but
Bang
like
was a vibe, right? Like, I mean, when
yeah,
they kind of walked down that, like, strutting down that thing, Malia leading them, like, that's the vibe I wanted to be in.
for
Like, if you
sure.
weren't writings on the wall, you were Bang Bang. Or, so, you know what I mean? Like, that vibe, that party that they were bringing was so fun.
It just wouldn't have been like the ideal song choice. It was the song choice that they had, and then they
Right.
worked
Yeah.
it, and it was great.
Totally. 7 days before quarterfinals, like, what are you gonna do? But they brought it. And I think they changed it too. They edited it to, like, make it more exciting.
Of course. Yeah. Which like I think that's a tribute to them of being flexible and very quick with their decision making and trusting your feedback and making those changes. I think it would have been easier to be like, no, it's a week away. Like, I'm sure you're right, but we're not doing that. There's no way that we can do that in 7 days. Are you kidding me?
I mean, the feedback that we gave them was crazy. I remember looking to them and I was like, are we really about to tell them that like this song needs to be changed? Because I'm also like, I'm an outsider at this point. I wasn't living in LA. I was like from another, big group that they were
Mhm.
probably like, what the fuck is he doing here?
Trying to
Like,
sabotage us?
I mean, it's really a testament to that group with like they're pros, like they understand professionalism. Like
Yeah.
a lot of them were in the pop music program at USC, and they're not just emotionally engaged with this. They are like on a professional level,
Right.
extremely dedicated and engaged, and just like want to be the best and like do their best. So they trusted us,
Yeah.
and they didn't really need to have like a. I don't remember if they did have like an internal conversation with like guys, like should we listen to them or not. Like I think they kind of just like in the room with us talked it out. So
So
it's never too late. Like message from that is like it's never too late to change your song, and listen to people and trust people and don't get too internally involved.
you also just can't like be too precious. I mean, I think it's not even just set building, it's everything, like arrangers, whatever it is. Like the moment you become too precious about your work, like you stop yourself from improving it. And
It's
I just
literally Smeagol.
like
With the ring, my precious,
yeah.
the
yeah,
precious ring.
exactly. Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
it's this thing that you like have to hold and you can't let go of, and you're like you have an emotional attachment to it in a way that's unhealthy, and
Right.
that's really what being precious is all about. It's like
Acapella groups don't be Smeagol.
don't be Smeagol.
Don't be
Don't be Smeagol.
Smeagol. So I think Ben, you touched on something, and we've talked about I think possibly an answer to this. But I think a lot of music directors in acapella they have this struggle. It's probably one of the hardest things about being a music director, and it sounds little, but it's having friends in the group because like as a music director, you're leading, you're teaching, you're directing, you're arranging, you're saying you're
And then
flat.
you're all alone and nobody talks to
That's
you.
not what I thought you were gonna say at all, and that's why I'm laughing because
Right.
it's just having friends is so funny.
Because it's so true. There's so many music directors that I talk to, and I workshop them throughout the entire rehearsal, and I talk to them at the end, and I'm like, hey, like, how are you doing? He's like, I'm good. It's just, I feel really alone in this, and I'm like, you have like friends around you, like helping you. I was like, I don't know. I'm just trying to get them to really do it. And I'm just like, relax, like. Go eat lunch with them for a second. Like go have fun for a little bit. You're singing college a cappella. Have you guys is that a true thing that you guys have experienced as music directors and also working with music directors?
Yeah, I mean, I think what they were probably referring to is like, they don't have anyone to support them in the rehearsal situation. Having support in the rehearsal room, because like in our group, so in vocals, it's like we have a music director, we also have a president, we have a business manager, we have a whole board. So like all those people are kind of responsible for, if people are really not paying attention. President brings everyone in, has a little pep talk, listen to the music director,
Yeah.
back to work. So it's not just one person having to lift up the entire group
Yeah, that's
single-handedly,
huge.
and that's when it gets, I think, a little dangerous because you need support. You can't run it by one person, and if it's one person, I can definitely see how it can become isolating. But I always had, great presidents and other people to support me. And you also have to earn the trust of your group and earn the respect of your group. And you also
Hmm.
can't let it get to the place where people don't like who you've become because you're trying that hard to get people to focus or whatever it is. Like you have
Exactly.
to maintain, like the rehearsal environment has to stay friendly.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've been lucky, and the groups I've worked with have always respected me, and we've always, it's been frustrating at times, but we always get through it. But I can definitely see there are certain groups and certain dynamics where like that might not be the case, and people might just be assholes, and
Yeah.
so I don't really have an answer to that except choose a better group,
Be
but
better people. Be
be better
nice.
people.
I have a different perspective here because when I started, I took over a group where I was the youngest person directing a group of people who were all mostly older than me. And so
Mm.
I had to really learn. I think something that Ben said, which really resonates, is that respect has to be earned. You can't just expect it with the title, right? Just because you're a music director of something doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's going to just owe you their respect.
Right.
So I, from an early stage, I had to really work hard to gain that trust
Mm.
and gain that respect from especially the older members of my group. And so as that like time, as things move and as I get older and the people in the group are younger than me, friendship, obviously, we're all friends, but I do understand the kind of lone road of like a music director, especially one who does it for a long time and is really trying to like elevate their group. I can understand that that it can be a lonely path because you have such a clear vision for what you want to
Mm.
do with your group. And but I think it's so important that you communicate that vision to a few trusted people so that they can support you on this. I
Yeah.
remember like one of my dear friends, Charlotte, who was the president of Nor'easters for a point. I mean, while I was music director, I think I went through like, I served the group alongside like 5 or 6 different presidents. And the dynamic was always different, but I think one thing that we always wanted to do was make sure that the group felt really motivated and excited. And despite what our differences were, like I was the music director for so long, but I did have disagreements with people on the way that we wanted to direct things or the way that we wanted to pick songs or who should sing what solos and blah, blah, blah. But I think the president's role was really important to make sure that the group felt motivated and that their voices were being heard.
Mm.
And I think when people feel like they have agency, then despite their disagreements, they can come together. At
Yeah.
the end of it all, we always knew when we were competing in ICCAs, we knew that even if I had a disagreement with like the choreographer about like something because I felt like the arrangement needed to shine here and they were over choreographing or whatever it was, I knew that they were coming at it from a place of I want this to be the best it can be, and I was coming from a place of I want this to be the best that it can be. And so I think if everyone can agree on that, you
Yeah.
can work through some of the like natural disagreements that are going to happen. As for like being friends with people, I mean, you just have to learn how to separate the work from the party, like you got to be able to just do that and know that we are all here on an elective basis. We are not paid to be here.
Yeah.
And even in the case of like SoCal Vocals where they're in a very pre-professional program, like they're still college kids, right? This is
Yeah.
fun. This is meant to be fun. And I think for us we developed this idea that like fun for us meant working really hard in rehearsal and then having a great time outside of rehearsal, but being successful in things like competitions and like putting really good work out there was really fun for us too. And so I think we all rallied behind that goal. And I think
Yeah.
that probably is what it is. Most groups probably just need to have a big sit down and talk about what their goals are.
Big
And
time.
people just need to agree on all that stuff.
Yeah. I think like the two really important things I think both of you have said is the importance of trust and respect in the group. and then also having clear visions and clear spoken visions and goals in the group, and having that constant communication. And also, I guess three things, but also having a not all everybody a part of these conversations, but having a team that's all on the same page, so that when you need support, you have support, and there's this communication, and there's clear expectations of like, okay, I know this person has this vision, so I'm going to support that in the way that I can, so that all the group is excited about this vision as well, and feel inspired and ready to do the work that it takes to get to that vision, get to that goal. So I think you guys both hit it right on the head. I think that was perfect. So those music directors that are eating lunch by themselves and feel like they don't have friends in the group, one, don't be a jerk. Don't take it so seriously. And also, bring people around you. Do the work
Yeah.
it takes to actually be kind and be trusted and be respected in your group.
It definitely takes like it's a balance between doing what you think is right for the vision that you want to achieve, but also making people at least feel like they have agency in that. Because they're all here too. They're putting in work too. They may not be putting as much work as you are, but don't be falling on the sword just because you think you're putting in way more work than everyone, so you deserve all this respect and all this stuff. That's all made up.
Mm,
You're putting in all this work because you want to, and don't make other people feel bad about that, the fact that they don't want to.
mm,
You
Or
just
that
need to
they
make
weren't elected. You know, it's just
they weren't elected to do that because they
right.
totally didn't want to do that job. And you want to, and that's great. Allow yourself to be empowered to do your job without making other people feel bad that they're not doing your job, because
Yeah.
you don't want them to do your job anyway. So why make them feel bad about not doing it? But at least make sure that they feel like they have agency in the thing, that they're also putting in hours, they're coming into rehearsal, and that their time is being well spent too.
yeah. Also, part of that is I think at the beginning, especially for competition season, which is when I think a lot of the intensity uh, is more, and people are really emotional about it. It's something everyone's working really hard on.
Yeah, big time.
Sometimes you're rehearsing every day. Like it can get a lot. So going into a competition season, especially if the group hasn't done it in a year or two, there's always going to be new people that haven't done it before. So just going into it, having like an opening conversation, first of all agreeing, everyone getting on the same page that you want to compete, and then if you do, what that's going to look like, what is expected of everyone, what the goals are, you know, and being really clear about that up front, so that everyone can be on the same page, hear everyone's perspective about it,
Yeah.
hear from people who have competed before, so the new people can understand what it's like, what the last time was like, maybe what they want to change from how the last time they did things, what problems they ran into, how they can avoid them this time, because there's a lot of, you know, unnecessary uh, emotional damage that can happen during an intense time like that. And
Yeah.
I think that if things are talked about, communicated more clearly, the leadership is more effective. Like you can always be better. There are always better things you can do to make people's experience better.
Boom. Man, the amount of absolute wisdom that should be in books that you both just shared is phenomenal. Want to close out this conversation with a game. It's a game I like to call Just the Top. Okay? Now, this is a game where I'm going to play just the very beginning of an arrangement that you've made, and it could be an arrangement from any year. I've gone back, way back.
I think I'm gonna be bad at this. I'm usually bad at these kinds of games, but let's go for it.
Well, we're gonna start easy. We're gonna start easy. I'm gonna play the first one. This is gonna be real easy in the beginning for both of you. Okay, Shams, you're first. This is our first song that you're just gonna hear just the top of.
It's writings on the wall.
All right, you heard the beginning. Shams, what is that?
It's writings on the wall.
Riders on the Wall from what group?
This is from the Nor'easters, and I think this particular recording sounds like it's from, I think because this is in the lower key. Uh, so this is the original arrangement of Writings on the Wall.
Wow. Yeah, it is. It is. And you knowing that it's the lower key is kind of mind. Do you have perfect pitch?
Hell no. I have perfectly flat pitch. No, I don't have perfect pitch, but I do remember those particular keys.
Nice. All right. So I know that started out easy. All right, but here's one that you both technically worked on, but here's yours, Ben. All right.
Acapop Kids, and wait, what's this? Oh, it's Shallow.
Wait, but I thought he was just giving the little chalkboard noise, and I was like, oh my God.
Well, a lot of songs come
Can you
after the
imagine?
chalkboard noise.
Well, that's what I was saying. I was like, how are we gonna know?
So you got that one. All right, here we go. This is going a little bit further back. Shams, this is yours.
This is this is Diamonds sung in the classroom of Laugh, probably after when everyone was not in a good situation the next morning after some activities, I would say.
Yes.
It was the yeah, it was the My Love, which actually was derived from Eric Whitacre's original composition of When David Heard. Um, he has this like sequence that goes like my son. So
Yeah.
I lifted that from him, and actually the group has been using that motif even to this day.
All right. This is way, way back then. All right, ready?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna give you.
God Bless the Child. That was Emily Golia, who I was talking about earlier.
Nice.
SoCal Vocals. And I don't know, I couldn't tell you what exact recording that was. I mean, I guess it was probably from like the semifinal of ICCA.
So this was a rehearsal video posted by Joe Safranco.
Yeah.
Wow.
I can't believe that's not unlisted.
Shams, here's your next one. Ready?
Yeah. This sounds like the beginning of
Are these groups that have just done our arrangements without our
this
knowledge?
doesn't sound like any groups that I've been
This
involved with.
one, this one might be
Oh.
possibly.
Oh, Don't You Worry, Child.
Ah, yes. This is Don't You Worry, Child.
Yeah.
Now, who was this originally arranged for?
This was the Nor'easters when I was in the group, 2013 ICCA winning
Okay.
closer.
Nice. All
I
right,
love
last
that.
one. Last one, Ben. Here's yours.
That's His Eyes on the Sparrow, originally arranged for LA Choral Lab. And I think that was the Choral Lab performance, right?
No, it was originally created for the LA Choral Lab, but this was the Alfred Music Choral.
Oh, okay. It's the Alfred official published.
Yeah, it's their official page. So I don't know who what the choir is.
I think they just hire some people to.
Yeah, but that was the official one. But wow, that was quick. Y'all got it a lot quicker. I was gonna play more for most of these tracks. You guys got them right on the head. I don't think I would know Trill's arrangements from the very beginning, from our very start. So impressive. Well, thank you guys so much. This has been such a fun conversation for me. We got to nerd out a little bit and talk about what it is to be a music director in an a cappella group, what it is to compete, the pet peeves we have, the things that are great about a cappella. So thank you guys both. I really appreciate you. And for those watching, I hope you enjoy this episode. We are going to be doing a lot more of these. This is episode 1 of The Winning Edge, and there will be a lot more to come to talk about competitive a cappella. Thank you guys.
Thanks for having
Thanks,
us.
Ray.